I needed power to check my wiring out, so I bolted the battery tray in place, and I had a place to put my battery. There you can see where I bolted the front of the tray up to my strap that I made. I pulled the harness out of the front of the car, the wiring harness for the lights and the horn and the turn signals, and I laid it out where I could get a good look at it. And there were some problems with it I had to fix, so that made it easier. Checked all the connections, all the solder connections, all the splices. Any crimp connectors, I cut those out and soldered the wires together so there aren't any crimp connectors in the harness anymore. Checked everything with my meter. I had a lot of oxidized contacts on my sockets, so I cleaned all those, and when I put the bulbs back in, I used a little dielectric grease. And there it shows the parking lights on. And the brake booster's not in the car, so there's no rod holding the pedal up, so it just swings freely, so the brake lights are always on when I have the battery in the car. And here I am testing the lights out. I just used one light bulb from the left side, and I just swapped it between the two sockets. There's left side turn signal. And the right side turn signal. And there's the high beam. And I just swapped the bulb into the other socket. Check that light. And everything's working right. I did have a broken wire on the left side in the headlight socket. I had to fix that. And after cleaning up the contacts, the oxidation, they work pretty well. Taped up the harness, and I'm going to get it ready to run it back up front. Put some convoluted tubing over the wires and ran them behind the fender to try to hide them a little bit. One of the front light lenses was brown, so I repainted them both black. I didn't put a whole lot of work into it because you can't see it, but I figured both black is better than one brown. I clamped the wire to one of the studs where the booster goes, so I need something to hold the wires where I soldered them together. I taped the harness in the back there in the front, put the horn relay in place. Got that all cleaned up. And I started to route the wires for the alternator and the starter and the temperature sender. I decided I wasn't going to put them back in the stock location. I wanted to try to hide them if I could. Put the alternator in place so I know what the wire lengths needed to be. Made up a few pigtails. There's a 10 gauge wire for the output of the alternator. And ran the wires down from the alternator and the temperature sender. I ran those down the front of the block and then started to put the harness together, trying to figure out the lengths everything needed to be. And a 43-year-old harness, and it's got a bunch of stuff like that in it. I didn't change anything. I left it wired the same way it was, and I just tried to clean it up a little bit and solder everything together and get all the crimp connectors out. So if it had issues, it's still going to have issues because I didn't change anything. And there it shows I'm running the harness up the frame. It went straight down the front of the block and then started looping up. I put the power steering pump in place to make sure the ground cable didn't interfere with the brackets at all. And there it shows I'm starting to route the wires. I decided to loop up over the steering shaft. I didn't think I'd have enough room if I went underneath it. So I made me up a little bracket. I bent up some 1/8 inch flat stock and hung it on one of the control arm studs, and I'll put a nut on that to hold it in place. Put that little bracket, and then I added another bracket on the frame, drilled and tapped it, try to keep the wires out of trouble. There I'm splicing the wires. They're cut to length, and I splice them so they'll fit well. And like I said, I didn't change anything. I just put it all back together a little neater and took all the crimp connectors out. And there I got the harness all taped up and in place. And there I ran some convoluted tubing down the wiring harness, and I got a larger clamp on the frame there, and I just started kind of tying it up and trying to make it look neat. Got a plastic clamp on the fender liner there on the lower part that holds it. And the upper straps, I got them from MPD. They're a little bit short, so I ordered some from year one. Hopefully they'll be a little bit longer and fit better. And there it is, all wired up. So hopefully get a chance to start it up here shortly.